Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Reclamation. I am Paula Collins, your Magdalene sound healer and spirituality mentor. And today I'm sharing a deeply personal story. The moment everything in my life changed. So get cozy and settle in. This story is about healing, it's about awakening, and it's about reclaiming your purpose after pain. Because sometimes in life, it takes some type of traumatic event for us to wake up and to realize that we're meant for more, that we're now able to step into our purpose in a way that we were not, in a way that we didn't even realize we needed to, right? Sometimes we feel like we're in our purpose and we're doing what we're supposed to do. But even though we may have felt a calling to something in our life, we can get wrapped up in all of the little bits and pieces of it. And we become so immersed that we forget that there is a life outside of that, right? And so this is how it all started. I was a high school English teacher, and I absolutely loved my job. I adored my students, each and every one of them. I taught ninth and 10th grade English, and I just love that age. Call me crazy, some people do, but I love those kiddos so much. And I couldn't wait to wake up in the morning, get ready, and get to my classroom because not long after I would open up the door, I would have kids in my classroom sitting and talking, eating their breakfast, just enjoying being in their company, right? And then after school, I'd have kids in my classroom again, and they would be there to say goodbye, to give me a hug before they left. And they didn't call me Mrs. Collins, they called me Mama Collins, and I loved that because it meant that they trusted me on a different level, right? And even when they would come in for conferences or I was at some extracurricular event, they would introduce me to their parents, their aunties, their grandparents as this is my school mom, Mama Collins. And it would melt my heart, right? I just loved it. I had a soft spot for these kids. But I was so busy, right? I would leave my house in August to start the first day of school, and my husband would wave goodbye and say, "See you in June." That gives you some idea because I was involved in so many other things because I just wanted to be a part of these kids' lives, right? I didn't just want to be the classroom that they walked into for 90 minutes to learn about things that maybe didn't interest them, if you get my drift. We read books that I'm sure they didn't want to read, and we wrote papers that I'm sure they didn't want to write. But I wanted them to know that they were important beyond that. I wanted them to know that I was a safe space, right? Let's face it, every teacher wants to be liked and accepted and belong, right? We want our students to really enjoy being with us. So maybe over this overindulging in what I was doing and how I was living was had that edge of people pleasing to it. You know what I'm talking about? Have you been there? You do things, you go the extra mile sometimes, and it can be out of the goodness of your heart. When I tutored my students after school, it was out of the goodness of my heart. It really was. Because I wanted them to be successful, right? I wanted them to not be frustrated every time they came in. I mean, I went so far as to help these students. I mean, one of my students came up and said, "Hey, Mama Collins, can you teach me how to write?" And I'm like, "Well, that is what English is for." And they said, "No, like actually write in cursive." And what I was learning about my kiddos in my classroom is that nobody really taught them the mechanics of writing. So I went out and I bought paper that you would use in first and second grade to teach them how to form letters. Um, and maybe I was doing this as a service to myself to make it easier to read what they were actually writing with a pencil and a pen. But they really wanted this. And there were times when I tutored my students in the mechanics of writing a good essay and writing, um, some type of research paper, that I actually had their parents come in and they were sitting in the back of my classroom so they could help their kiddos at home because these were things that they never learned. And while it warmed my heart that they were there and they wanted to learn, it also broke my heart that somehow the system had failed, right? But with all of that comes this pressure to be everything for everyone, right? And with all of that, there became this growing sense of a disconnection from my deeper truth, right? To realize that there were other things in my life that I needed to be doing that I didn't have time for because I was spending so much time. And these were things outside of being with my husband. Okay. Because by this point, my kids were already like in high school and they were involved in all of their things. And I made it to their games and all of their stuff that they did. Don't get me wrong. I loved being there for my kids. But with all of that running around and trying to do all the things at home and trying to be there for my own kids and be there for my husband, right? It drowned out the voice in my head and the inkling and the nudges of my heart and my soul that said, "Paula, you're missing some things." And so at one of the parent teacher conferences, one of my students' parents told me that her daughter was being baptized at her church. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I taught at a Catholic high school. Um, and so she told me the day and the time. She emailed me all the information and I said, "Don't tell her. I want to surprise her, right? I don't want her to know that I'm coming." So I got in my car that Sunday morning to drive off to this church where she was being baptized. And you know how a lot of times new churches really don't look like churches? They look like an office building. You know what I'm talking about, right? Or they're in a storefront that used to be something else. You've seen these, right? So I'm driving and I'm not finding it. And my GPS is telling me it's there, but I don't see it. And so I go to turn around, right? And I'm making a left-hand turn. And the next thing you know, I'm turning, but I end up in a parking lot not realizing how I got there. Because I was T-boned by somebody who decided to ignore the rules of the traffic laws and go left of center in a no passing zone. There was a double yellow, right? And they T-boned me. And to be honest with you, even though I don't think I blacked out, I don't really remember going into that parking lot. I don't remember putting my car in park, but I also don't remember losing consciousness. So It was really weird. And I sat there stunned because if you're going to get T-boned and you're turning left, chances are it's going to be on the driver's side, not on the, it's going to be on the passenger side, sorry, not the driver's side. And so I look, and in my car, I've got a great car. I love my car. I think my car is an amazing, safe vehicle. And it's got those side airbags that deploy, right? And it's got the steel enforced like bars in it to protect you. So those airbags deployed. And the thing that kind of snapped me out of being stunned, I guess, was my car dialed 911. And I didn't even know I had that service on my car, which was really bizarre too. And it dialed 911 for me. And when somebody answered, I was shocked, right? I had a hard time getting out of my vehicle because I'm short and my car seat is so close to the steering wheel, right? And I couldn't reach my hand between the door and the driver's seat to make it go back so I could get over the center console, right? And it's wintertime, so I have on boots, I have on a coat, right? I'm dressed for the elements because it's cold here in Ohio. Um, be that as it may, that happened. I thought I just had a concussion, right? I had whiplash, thought I had a concussion, went back to teaching way before I should have, because as a high school teacher, you know what concussions look like because you end up with kids in your class who play sports who come back to school with concussions, right? So my students loved it because the lights were turned out, because I couldn't handle the lights, right? Well, some time passes. This happens in November. We have Christmas break. We come back to school in January. We do midterms. Um, and I'm still having issues. I can't go to pep rallies anymore because the sound is just too much for me. Um, I can't go to the school dances because the DJ plays too loudly. I don't know what's going on. I go to see my neurologist. We do extra testing and all of that, and we realize that I have a traumatic brain injury. Now, let me tell you, and I'm probably going to get emotional just so you know this going into it, but there are things in my life that I loved doing. I loved going to concerts with my husband. I loved going out dancing with my husband. And I loved reading. I could sit down with a novel and read it in a day. Well, all of that was taken away because I couldn't handle the loud sounds anymore, right? And I could only read for 25 minutes before my vision was gone for the rest of the day. And I actually struggle with being on a screen. Like I can't be on a screen on my phone or my computer for too long before my eyes go blurry, right? And so parts of my life were taken away from me. COVID hit, we all went home, right? And then we started teaching online to finish out the year. But as I'm experiencing all this stuff, I am realizing that I can't go back the following year, that this injury is causing me to resign. So in April, when I have to sign my letter of intent to return, I sign it as not returning because of what happened to me. Let me tell you, being forced into stillness and not doing anything and not looking over notes for the summer as to how I'm going to redo lesson plans and what my classroom might look like the next year. Being forced to doing nothing has an emotional toll that it takes on you. It really hurts. It hurts a lot. It causes you to take stock of your life. And I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, I am too young to be retired and do nothing. Right? I'm too young for this. I need to do something that has purpose. But what happens when all of that is coming up? Well, first of all, My identity as a high school English teacher is unraveling right before me. And sometimes, you become a friend of convenience and a friend of circumstance, right? Like the teachers that I was friendly with at school, our relationship kind of stopped at the door. We didn't go out afterwards, so now I'm here and I have a really small circle of friends. And, you know, people are tired of asking me to do things because they know I can't. And so I get less and less invitations to do things. And I'm really feeling the loneliness, right? I mean, my husband and my kids are still here for me, don't get me wrong, and I'm still seeing my granddaughter every weekend. So I have that, and I have a few other friends. But my life is unraveling right before me. And all of a sudden, things that I had struggled with my whole life start bubbling to the surface. The people pleasing, right? The trying to blend to fit in or changing who I was to fit in to a particular situation, that starts rising to the surface. And I'm having this identity crisis, and I don't know what to do because I don't know how to handle all of these emotions that are bubbling up and these memories that are coming back to me from being bullied and from my sexual assault and all of the things that compounded. And I didn't know what to do. And I'll tell you right now, talk therapy doesn't work for your girlfriend here. I had tried that in the past from all of my trauma from things I had been through, and it never worked for me. I know that it works great for some people, but that didn't work for your girl here. And so I'm like, what do I do with my life now? How do I change? How do I work through this grief of this loss of career, this loss of independence in a way, this loss of clarity, this loss of identity? How do I deal with this? Well, because I had time and I scrolled on my phone, I found out about this course. And this course said that through the process of learning to be a life coach, because I decided I wanted to be a life coach because I could do that from home, because I really felt that I could help people because of all that I've always done through my life. So I decide that I'm going to join this course to be a life coach. And in the process, it's going to help me work on my stuff, right? Because in order to practice some of the tools that we learned, we met with other people in the program. And those women became my life coaches. Those women became my life coaches. And we also had other people, mentors that were part of this that we could meet with that would help us if we really had a bigger block we wanted to work through. And so I worked with one or two of those as well. And one of them said to me, you could totally, you really, you're going to be great at this. You should be offering this to people. And so I decided that that's when my life coaching career and my energetic healing would start. And so all of the things that I learned to use to help in my healing, which was EFT tapping, which was Reiki, which was IET, which was sound healing, which was meditation, and journaling and mindfulness, right? All of those things that I learned and that helped me. And then I was now certified in. I had been certified in Reiki for a long time, and you've probably learned that. But all of those things helped me to move forward. All of those things helped me in a way that I wasn't aware of. And this started a rebirth in who I was as a person, who I was becoming. Like, I felt like the phoenix in a way where my old life went to ashes and I was rising from those ashes. And so I had a major spiritual awakening during this time where I started seeing the more subtle signs. I started listening to my intuitive gifts. And I really immersed myself in all of those things. And I started to become more vocal about my gifts and what they were. And I started offering my healing modalities to that I had learned and been instructed into other people. And this was before I launched my coaching, right? This was before that. This was before my coaching, before my courses, right? I was dipping my toes in the water and it was scary. Let me tell you, it was uber scary, folks. Like when you go from the perfect little Catholic Christian girl to somebody who's now into the metaphysical and the mystical, people look at you differently and people start exiting your life, right? And that is scary because you see these people leaving, but you know what happens when the people leave? It opens up room for people to come back into our lives. And I think that is a huge lesson that we have to learn. And it's another growing pain that we have to go through, right? Because I wanted to call in people who were more like me. I wanted to call in people who were open to these things. And I started learning more truths about who I was. I started learning more truths about the things that I had been raised with and the things that I had been taught. And through this learning, I grew and grew and grew and grew, and my awakening expanded and expanded and expanded, right? And it became this beautiful thing, and I was no longer the people pleaser, and I was no longer the scared little girl who didn't want to walk into a situation because my social anxiety was going down as well. And that's a big deal too. That's a huge deal. That here I am, I'm growing and I'm changing, and all of a sudden people are noticing that this vibrant woman is emerging. And she's different. And even though I couldn't do all the fun things that I used to do with my husband, going to concerts and going out dancing, he noticed the changes and he said, you know, I really like this version of you. Not that he didn't love me before, don't get me wrong. He loved me prior to that. But he loved this new version because he got to watch me blossom in the process, and my close friends got to watch me blossom in the process. And I became more confident and I became more open and loving and open-minded about things. And it changed everything. And I realized that my identity was not tied to a title. It wasn't tied to being a mom or a sister or a wife or a teacher or a friend. My identity was tied to the part of me that was deep within. Can you feel that? Can you feel that with me? Can you feel that my identity was tied to the person within me, to the person that was emerging? Because this is what changed in me, right? And as my identity became tied to who I was at a soul and a spiritual level, I didn't look for all of the affirmations that I needed from outside, from all of the, I need to belong here, 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 and here, right? I became somebody who realized that my belonging came from within. And through accepting and honoring and all of the other stuff that goes with that, it changes everything. You feel more alive, you feel more vibrant, you feel more whole, you feel more alive, you feel the transformation, you feel the difference. It's no longer just a knowing, it's a feeling, right? And through this, I started to rediscover parts of myself that had been hidden for such a long time because it was piled on top of all of the trauma that I had from all of the conditioned beliefs and the false beliefs and values that I had been carrying that were from other people. that were placed upon me. And, a lot of that's okay because that comes from our childhood and our growing up and all of that, right? It comes from there. But I didn't have to keep claiming it if it wasn't something that was part of my belief system. And I became okay with that. And that was a huge gift too, right? So here I am. I shift from teacher to healer. And in a way, I'm still a teacher. I'm just teaching in different ways, right? And my platforms look different. I'm not walking into a classroom, right? As a teacher, I'm online. I have a private Facebook group, right? I go on to all the socials. I have this podcast. So in a way, I'm still a teacher, but I'm also a healer because I have these beautiful gifts and talents, right? And in the beginning, I had the resistance of, who am I to do this, right? We all go through, and we have a major life change. We go through that whole thing where we feel like an imposter. We get imposter syndrome. And I developed that early on. But then I thought to myself, who am I not to do this? I wouldn't have been given these gifts and talents, right? And I needed coaches to help me get through those, right? We all need coaches along the way. I needed the coaches to get through the trauma, to release the trauma. I needed coaches to help me learn different things. I needed coaches to get me through the imposter syndrome, right? I need coaches to help me learn for building my business, right? For building courses, things that I had never done before, even though I had in some ways done that. And so I had to move through the imposter syndrome, and that wasn't easy because with imposter syndrome, lots of other things build up inside of us. And that's okay because they come up when they're ready to be released. And I worked through that, right? So I learned so much about myself through this, right? I learned so much about myself. I learned that I could heal from the trauma, the disconnection, the people pleasing, and the self-abandonment, right? And through that, through my learning, I deepened my gifts. I deepened my courage and my truth. I became more authentic. I became more in alignment with my higher power. And I realized that now I'm honoring my true purpose and my calling, and I get to do that. And so here's my message to you today. If you're in the midst of the crud, if you're in the midst of the disconnection and the trauma and the hurt, you're not alone. And know that these things don't define you. Know that it is part of your awakening. Know that it is part of something that is going to open you up to things that you didn't realize were there. And as you uncover all the stuff that was hidden, you're going to find out how powerful you are. You're going to find out how sacred you are. And you are going to find out that all of these things that you've experienced help you step more deeply into your purpose. And isn't that why we're here? To step more deeply into that purpose? And I know that if I did it, I know that all of you listening can do it. And I know deep down that if you need somebody to help guide you, all you have to do is click one of the links in the show notes, right? And it will take you to my website. It will take you to my Instagram. It will take you to the other places where you can find me, right? And it can help, I can help you get through all the stuff because I've been there. I have the tools. I have the healing modalities, and I can help you do that because all of the things that I learned became tools in my toolbox. And this is what I teach my clients to do. I teach them to use the tools that I give them put it in their toolbox, right? Put it in the thing that they're going to be able to take with them wherever they go to help them to heal. Right? So they can rise up from the ashes, right? They can meet the parts of themselves that may have been hidden inside, and in past podcasts, I have talked about the maiden, the mother, and the crone. I've allowed those parts of me to rise up. And I've healed my mother, my sister, and my witch wound to help me to rise up because of all of the things I have learned and experienced. I get to pass that on to you now. And to me, that is truly a gift. And it makes me smile and it makes me so happy that I get to pass that on to you. Because as you meet those parts of yourself and as you heal from those wounds, you get to meet a part of you that you didn't know was there. And you get to find your strength and you get to figure out that your identity comes from within, not from without. And you get to learn how sacred and how beautiful and how magical and how immense and expansive you can be. Right? So thank you so much for being here and listening to me talk about my experience. I hope that something in this helps you to understand more about you and maybe awakened something in you that needs to rise up, to be seen, to be acknowledged, so that you can move into deeper healing, right? And I invite you to share this particular episode with somebody who might be going through their own dark night of the soul, to let them see that there is light at the other end of this. That there is this woman who spent so much of her life, the first 50 years of her life, trying to be something that she really wasn't, but doing it to blend in, to belong, to be accepted. And to know that if they had a traumatic event that really caused the brakes to be put on, that like me, that is the divine's way of saying there's more for you, right? And so I am so excited that I got to share this with you here today. And I want you to know that, I'm going to have future episodes that are going to help you move through things. And my next one is all about one of my favorite topics, and it's about sacred sound healing. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But once again, thank you so much for being here. Like, subscribe, share your comments, share this with a friend, download it so you always have it with you to listen to, right? So much love to you. Enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your evening, whatever it is for you. Enjoy it. Remember that you're never alone. And I will talk with you again really soon. Bye-bye for now.